Okay, hello everyone. As my friend said, my name is Michał Sawicz. I work for Canonical. I'm mostly focused on Ubuntu Touch, on the shell of Ubuntu Touch, so the home screen, the indicators, etc. And I will try and tell you quickly a little bit about Ubuntu Touch, what it is not, a little bit of its history, and how to get it, what to do with it, and then hopefully we'll have some questions that I can answer. So let's start. So what Ubuntu Touch is, first and foremost, it is Ubuntu. It's the same operating system that you know and hopefully like, that we've been running on our desktops for quite a while. It's the same completely system, just a different package set. There is a new Unity UI. So Unity is the desktop environment that we have for Ubuntu that's been there for almost 2 years now, or over 2 years, depending on how you count it. It's the default in the current long-term support version, so 12.04. The version that's there is written in Nexus, in a technology that we don't want to use anymore. So the new Unity for Ubuntu Touch is a rewrite effectively in Qt and QML based on Qt 5.0. We are hoping to switch to 5.1, but there's some issues with it that we probably won't have the time to switch to 5.1 before Ubuntu 13.10 release. The UI framework is Qt and QML for apps as well. So the native apps for Ubuntu Touch are basically written in C++ and or mostly QML. And if you need C++, if you need any extensions, you can write them in C++. What's more, Ubuntu Touch is a completely new set of touch-oriented applications for Ubuntu. So be it the web browser, be it the contacts app, obviously the dialer, which we didn't have before because we didn't have a GSM card or a SIM card in Ubuntu usually before. So we have a set of new apps that are working on both Ubuntu Touch and Ubuntu Desktop. They all are meant to be completely portable between the form factors. And about that, their converged experience that we want to achieve is that there basically is supposed to be no difference between your phone and a laptop that you use, provided that you connect your phone to a bigger display. So if you, the idea is that if you have your phone, because the phones now are more powerful than whatever netbooks a year or two ago, with 4-core Snapdragon CPUs and whatnot, and gigabytes of RAM. It's a powerful machine, and if you connect it to a keyboard, to a display, to a monitor, to a mouse if you want, it's perfectly capable of performing the usual desktop tasks. And or if you want to connect it to a TV, it can easily become your media center experience with all the data that you have on the phone itself, without the need to sync between the devices all the time. So that's the converged experience that we are going towards right now. Right now we are working on or are focused on phones and tablets, but that's going to grow into desktops and TVs and whatever other devices we can think of later. The whole of Ubuntu Touch, so all the code is open source, at least the code that we produce as in Canonical. It's open source, it's available on our code repositories in Launchpad. If you want to tinker with it, we welcome you to it. What it is not. So first of all, it is not an Android skin, although we are running the Android kernel for hardware support, basically, because as people mentioned before in this conference, even getting mainline Linux support for hardware in mobile devices is very difficult, unless you are using the Android kernel, in which case it's there. Only you have to somehow talk to it. So on our devices on Ubuntu Touch, Android's kernel and some bits of Android userland, some services, but not, for example, Bionic. We don't have not Bionic, but not Dalvik. We don't have Dalvik on there, It's running in an LXC container, so the main file system, the root file system, is actually Ubuntu, and the services that we need from Android that we are gradually moving towards Ubuntu are running in a container, but we are trying to replace them bit by bit and just go away. So the idea is that ultimately, if we do get hardware with mainline kernel support, we want to support it just as well. So everything that we have needs to be able to work ultimately on mainline kernel, provided that we have the drivers for hardware. So it is not a desktop OS yet, although, as I said, it's going there. The whole UI is going to be ported to, or maybe not even ported, but extended to support the use case of a bigger screen with mouse and keyboard input. But it's not there yet. Right now we are solely focused on the phone, and soon after we release the version 1 of the phone, we will put more focus on the tablet. Ubuntu Touch is not hardware. We don't have any particular hardware. We are working with the Nexus devices from Google and just using them. So there is no hardware that would be specific to Ubuntu Touch, or we don't have any other targets than those right now. A little bit of history. In September 2011, when I joined Canonical, soon thereafter we started looking at moving Ubuntu to a tablet device, but for different reasons, mostly business reasons, we switched our focus to Ubuntu TV in November that year. And we introduced Ubuntu TV, which was then based on Unity 2D, which was, again, a QML version of the Unity desktop environment that we had. And we were working on the TV for quite some time. In April 2012, we started to focus on the touch version and on the current vision that we have for converged devices. And in January 2013 on CES in Las Vegas, we showed our first preview of Ubuntu Touch on phones. Later that year, in May, we showed the tablet version on MWC in Barcelona, and History++ in October this year, so in a month or so, we will introduce or release the version 1.0 of the Ubuntu phone operating system that's basically supposed to support you in your. You should be able to use it as your daily phone. So all of the stuff that you expect from a smartphone is going to be there. Or we are already accepting apps into the Ubuntu store, apps that are based on QML, and that's that. So in October, right now there are people who are working with or using those phones on a daily basis. So. Most of the stuff that you expect from a phone is already working, and we are just polishing it right now, basically. So how to get it and how to work with it? You can download it. It's free. There's, as I said, we are working with 4 Nexus devices. That's Galaxy Nexus, the Nexus 4, the Nexus 7, and the Nexus 10. So that's a bit of a spectrum of the devices that we are working on. From the smallest Galaxy Nexus to the biggest Nexus 10. And there's also a big set of community ports for other devices, because if a device works with Clockwork Mod or something like that, it's relatively easy to port Ubuntu Touch to it. It's all available in Ubuntu, so all the packages that are installed on or are available on Ubuntu Touch are just as available on standard Ubuntu desktops. So whether it's apps, whether it's the apps that we have new for the touch, they're meant to be usable on a desktop as well, and they are available in the standard repositories. And also there's a Qt Creator-based SDK that we have built upon Qt Creator. So we have plugins specific to Ubuntu, so that you can run your app locally on your laptop and then deploy it over USB to a device and test it on the device as well. And everything is on Launchpad, as I mentioned before. All the code is on Launchpad. We are managing the code there. If you find some bugs, we are managing the bugs on Launchpad as well. The supported frameworks are QtQML version 5.0, and HTML5 is a first-class citizen on Ubuntu Touch as well. We are right now using Qt WebKit we have our own. We have basically a web runtime in which you can run hopefully any web app that there is, and we have support for PhoneGap as well. We have a new format of packaging applications because on a mobile device, it's the standard Linux packaging systems, or more than that, dependency resolving is very difficult because it takes a lot of CPU to go through the whole database and find all the dependencies that your app might have. So we came up with the notion of click packages. So apart from what we provide on Ubuntu Touch on the platform, if you need any new libraries or any new extensions, you need to package them with your application. So it's bring your own binary model. Applications are run in isolation via AppArmor. So they are installed in a separate directory. So actually, root file system is read-only. We already have images that use a read-only root file system, so you can't break it, because that's the other problem with standard Linux packaging, that if it gets into an inconsistent state, it's a pain to get it back without some knowledge of what to do. It's very difficult. So that's why we went for a read-only root file system, and everything else happens either on the home, on your home of the user, or in opt, or in some places that we allow writing to. The Ubuntu store is already up and running. It's a beta, but we are accepting apps, and there's actually an app showdown going on right now. So if you have ideas for an app, we welcome you to. We ask you to upload it for Ubuntu as well. And that's it from me in terms of what I wanted to introduce. And now I would like to get questions.
So for the good start, what are the minimal demandings of the system?
So it depends on what you want. So the idea is that we want to support both high-end phones as well as the lower end. So the Galaxy Nexus is obviously the slowest machine that we are working on, and it's performing quite well. So that's a 1.2 gigahertz if I remember correctly, and 1 gig of RAM, stuff like that. So it's, if you have a smartphone that's been on the market from starting maybe, 2 years ago, it should perform relatively well. We also have, to cater for that, we also have a lifecycle, application lifecycle comparable to what the guys talked about yesterday from Microsoft, so as Windows Phone. So if someone didn't see it, your application, if it's not focused, there's no guarantee that it's going to run. It might get killed. So there's mechanism for you to store data when you get unfocused, so that when you get launched again after that state, you can recover from the archive that you saved. So that's one of the means that we are going with to support lower end or mid range devices.
What's the main difference between Ubuntu Touch and other operating systems that use QML as their user interface, like Sailfish, for example?
What's the main use case? It's Ubuntu and not Sailfish, I think. It's probably the comparison with Sailfish OS it's obvious. It's very close. There are a few differences, of course. We are based on Ubuntu. We are using a different display server for reasons that I don't want to get into here, because there might be flying chairs. So let's not do that. But it's what's better about it. I really I won't be objective about it, so I'm not sure if it's a good thing to do, right?
I didn't want to ask why is it better.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, from an app developer perspective,
Okay.
if I'm writing an application for Sailfish, will it run on Ubuntu or vice versa?
So obviously, some of the APIs are different. We have our own set of components that are native, as in design and user experience. They're native to Ubuntu. So there will be some things that you would have to do, like replace some components. But especially with the new Qt 5.1 controls that are coming, I hope that we will converge on that and support basically, as much as possible. We do want to be for these apps to be portable easily.
So for the moment, you have to completely rewrite the UI, but
not completely, but because it's still QML. There are components. There are components that you would have to replace, and most of all you would have to replace the import statement, right? Because for us, you need to import Ubuntu components, and for Sailfish, you would probably need to import something else, and that's about it. Obviously, the paradigms, the patterns of the UI are potentially different. So I won't say that it's like it's just you can't use sed to port the app, right? But hopefully it will get better with time as well.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to ask about wireless debugging. Will it be available?
Debugging what? Sorry.
Wireless over
wireless
Wi-Fi.
debugging. Because we have we basically ported ADB to Ubuntu, and we are running ADB on our device. Then yes, as long as we the only thing missing last time I tried, because I love that feature for reasons, because if I have 3 or 4 devices lying around, being able to target one of them without all of them having to be connected, I used that a lot before. And right now what we were really missing is basically the Android properties. So we just weren't setting ADB to open a TCP connection. But yes, the main shell that you would get on when you go ADB shell, as you would for Android, you get into the Ubuntu shell, into the Ubuntu file system, not into Android. So yes.
Thank you.
Could you tell a little bit more about application lifecycle? Is it possible to run your code in the background, and how it behaves?
So right now it doesn't. Version 1 basically says that your application might get killed. So for the first version, there is no a UI application can't work if it's not focused. It might get killed. For later, we will definitely introduce stuff like background tasks that you will be able to run. It's basically not ready yet, but if you have any particular questions, or just we do have some plans. We haven't spec'd out and everything yet, but with next versions we will cater for use cases like that. For now, for the usual background things like playing music. Or playing or stuff that require constant attention. There's going to be basically system services that you would interface to. So we'd basically send a URI to a music file that the system service is supposed to play. And also, not right now, but obviously we are planning to have push notifications available, so you would be able to, if your app needs that, if your app needs to be woken up by some remote service, that's going to be available as well.
About the system integration, I mean, will it be possible to listen for events like Wi-Fi is turned on?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes, of course. So we are implementing as much as possible from the Qt standard APIs and Qt mobility, which are a set of APIs that are tailored, targeted at mobile development. All of that is first abstracted in what we call the platform API. So because we want to maybe not ourselves support, but we want to allow support for other toolkits, other frameworks to happen later. Then we have a low-level API for everything that you would hopefully need to support other toolkits. I know for SDL, Unity, Cocoa, right? So stuff like that. We obviously want to support stuff, things like that. And yes, we gradually will all of that. It's not locked down yet, right? So we try to support as much as possible that we can think of. But if there's something that we don't think of, file a bug, and we will discuss what we should do about it. We're completely open to suggestions. We want to work with you guys as well.
Since we talked about background tasks, how about battery life? Because I saw some blog posts that it's shorter than on Android.
So obviously we have issues with battery life, but those are just bugs, right? So the ultimate is that right now even it's much better than it was, because at some point because we didn't have a orientation, a central place to listen to orientation, we actually were holding a wake clock. Each application was holding a wake clock to the orientation sensor, and that caused the devices to never suspend. Right now it's better. So if I leave the tablet, for example, running, it will run for weeks at a time if I don't use it. So it's actually suspending properly. And if it comes to using actual usage, it's whatever the apps do, whatever we do. We will definitely have a lot of to do a lot of work to optimize it for battery usage. We have people working on that, on at least measuring what we are doing, what we should improve, etc.
You said that you are developing the tablet OS for the Nexus devices, but what about the X86 tablets that are around? Like, for example, the XOPC, where you can install a regular Ubuntu in it. You
will be able to run Ubuntu Touch on it.
So will you have to explicitly install an Ubuntu Touch on it, or just install Ubuntu with some desktop experience on it?
So right now, it depends what you want to do effectively. Because if you would like to have the desktop experience on your XOPC, that's your choice. If you would like to have the tablet experience on the XOPC, that will be as well your choice. So it's going to be a single. There isn't going to be a separation later, as in past 14.04, 14.10. There isn't going to be a separate version of Ubuntu for phone, desktop, etc. It's just going to be one system that will adapt to whatever device you are running it on. Whether it's a touch device, whether it has a keyboard attached, whether it has different capabilities, we will adapt. Or ideally, we will just not adapt, as in everything should work. That's our primary goal, right? So all of the stuff that we are implementing, that we are designing as well, is supposed to be workable with every means of input that you can imagine right now. So we are not trying. Right now we are separated because the Ubuntu desktop needs to work. The shell isn't complete to support everything that you would normally use on a desktop. But the end goal that we are working towards is that it's just going to be Ubuntu.
Okay, thank you.
Two questions. First one, can you install Ubuntu Touch on Android emulator?
We never tried, but there is completely no reason why I think we couldn't. Unless something in the emulator prevents us from replacing the root file system, stuff like that. I'm not sure if I know there are people that were trying. We weren't focusing on it yet. But yes, something like this, an emulator that you can do more things than you can normally do just running the app on your desktop. It's obviously planned, yes.
Okay. And second question that I ask everybody: do you have any automation hooks for apps?
Yes. So there are two systems that we are using for automation. So first of all, standard unit tests, low level. That's the default. And then the higher level UI testing first of all is QML UI testing, which is JavaScript based. We just take each component that makes sense. We put it on a blank slate and exercise it, using JavaScript, using standard JavaScript QML code. And on top of that, for integration testing, we have Autopilot, which is a Python-based solution that allows you to introspect the UI of the application, of the shell, etc., and basically using, for example, real input through dev view input and not directly to the application. It will basically exercise everything that you want. You can drag, tap, whatever. So yes, we are using that, and we are using that extensively. We have automated builds twice daily. We have automated releases 4 times a day. So all of the code that we are upstream for is released 4 times a day. With each merge request that we have, complete test suite is run on both virtual machines on x86 as well as the devices themselves. And then when we actually build an image, and it goes on again, right? So the whole test suite we have in the shell itself, in the UI, in the Unity shell itself. Right now we have over 500 QML UI tests, a few dozen unit tests, because we don't actually have that much C++ code, because we try to abstract from it. So if you know QML is completely based on plugins. So whatever you want to do in your UI, if you need more, then you effectively write a C++ plugin, and that plugin can be replaced easily, right? So if we make mocks of those plugins that we need to mock, so that so those QML tests are run in complete isolation on a blank slate of UI.
Great, bravo.
I haven't seen the whole presentation, so this might have been told, but you've said a moment ago that you're targeting to make one Ubuntu for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Does it mean that there is going to be a terminal emulator on the phone?
There already is.
How does it work? How will it work with the security? Because on the desktop I've got root user and stuff, and I expect it not to be enabled, at least by default, on an unadministrated device. So
yeah, of course. So that's obvious. Yes, we do have a terminal on the phone. It's not going to be installed by default on people's phones, and to actually install it or to exit or to sudo or something, you would have to unlock your device. To switch to a read-write root file system, you would have to do again some unlocking. But that's on one hand, that's security for the user, so that they can't break stuff themselves if they don't know what they're doing. So obviously, yes, the device is going to be locked down, but ultimately you will be able to get, and that's what we are doing right now. You will be able to get the complete access to the hardware, assuming that the OEM provides that, right? So because that's not going to be our decision at that point, probably, because if they require that it's locked down and unable, and you can't unlock it. Obviously, people will unlock it, but then warranty void, whatever will happen. He worked for Canonical. Will count.
Yeah, I worked, but I never watched at Ubuntu Touch. You said that root file system is read-only, but
yep.
Do you use any of those always read-only file systems, or is it just ext4 mounted as read-only?
It's mounted read-only by default, and there are ways to escape that, basically. With a setting, effectively, right? So if you will get root on the device, you will be able to again switch to a read-write file system. One of the reasons why we went with read-only is image-based upgrades. So as I said before, whatever tpkg apt or these kinds of package management is really not suited for a device like that. So if you upgrade your device, it's either going to rewrite the whole root file system or use minimal delta packages or minimal delta images that it will apply. There's a set of levels towards a device gets. So there's a default Ubuntu image, there's a per device image, there's a per OEM image, and per operator image that gets stacked on top of one another to get to what the to what the end result is supposed to be. But we hope that we will still have a single Ubuntu image at the bottom. So there will only ever be a single Ubuntu image at the bottom, and on top of that, if it's needed, there will be some overrides for hardware, overrides for OEM and operator.
If you have a read-only root file system, how do you have anything that you change in the, let's say, Linux layer in for example etc directory? Do you have any settings? In particular, I'm interested in user database files, so you can, because one would expect that you can create add users, and if the root file system is read-only, how do you solve the problem?
So there are parts of the file system that are bind-mounted read-write. So whether that's var or places that basically need to be read-write, we do it basically on a case-by-case basis. When we need something to be read-write, we bind-mount the directory, or maybe so I don't know all the details, so I won't be able to answer it concretely, but it's being taken care of. We obviously care about multi-user experience, so that's one of the things that we desperately want to do right. So even so we will, for example, the lock screen will actually run as a different user, as a system like DM, as we have it on Ubuntu desktop. So as soon as you lock your screen, your session will be going effectively to sleep, and you will be able to switch to a different session. And at that point, the lock screen, the greeter, as we call it, is taking over the stuff that the phone or the device still needs to do.
Yes, but I was asking because etc is quite an important place, and it's required from the very, very beginning of the boot process. So bind mounting it is somewhat tricky. But as you said, you don't know the details.
I don't have all the details, but even right now, if you actually install the read-only image, you will see that there's like 20 bind-mounted folders to a read-write location, so that we can actually have this all happening.
You've said a moment ago about stacking of images of Ubuntu. You are not afraid of the Android effect, like the Google has when they has standard system, then the device system, operator system, vendor system, etc., etc.
Obviously, we are, but we are what we came up with is trying to deal with that, in the sense that at the bottom there is what I mean, a stack of images. So the images on top of the default Ubuntu image will only contain the overrides, and we probably we'll probably limit what you can override. But in the end, again, it's not something that we can try and protect ourselves in terms of trying to allow OEM or operator customization. But in the end, it's the client that has, if they will want to fragment the ecosystem, we really can't do anything about it, I'm afraid. So we will see. But we are trying to cater for that, in the sense that we want to allow as much, enough for them to be able to customize in a good manner, like supported manner. That hopefully they won't need to or want to do crazy stuff.
So in short, you want to keep it centralized or allow the users to add some modification of their own?
Users, as in users or OEMs?
OEMs.
So they will, it's a difficult question to answer, because obviously if they want to do it, you can't do anything about it other than possibly we could prevent them from using the Ubuntu trademark, but it's money, right? So if they want to pay us for that and they want to do it, we will try and convince them not to, or try to help them in doing it in a proper way. But that might happen still. We will do everything that we can so that it doesn't. The way that we thought of those images stacked on top of another, it's still going to be a single Ubuntu image in the end that we put our stamp on. And on top of that, what they provide is hopefully going to be very small, so that they actually can do the differentiation that they want, but don't do bad stuff.
We heard recently that Ubuntu Edge project is down, unfortunately. What about, are you talking with some hardware vendors? When can we expect a device with pre-installed Ubuntu Touch on it?
So we are expecting the first Ubuntu Touch devices to hit the market next year. That's an expectation. I can't say any more or confirm anything. The Ubuntu Edge would be awesome to happen, but it didn't. But it was the risk that would happen. But it doesn't change anything for Ubuntu Touch itself, because we were talking with hardware vendors. We are talking with them, and we will be talking with them, as well as operators. And basically, we still need to do that and actually make it happen. And we expect this to happen next year, Q1, Q2, 2014.
Good luck, thanks.
Bless you.
Two questions. First one is about isolation of the applications. Do you have something similar to Android, which already do something like this? Isolation is per application, and also application have some rights to do the stuff on the phone. And the second one, do Canonical consider including the Dalvik machine for running just some applications from the Android?
So as far as application isolation goes, yes, we do have isolation based on AppArmor, which is the solution that Ubuntu uses already. It basically limits the application to a bare minimum access, so it's a whitelist effectively, right? So all applications that are not blessed by us, as in the system stuff, by default they won't have access to anything except what is needed to just draw, for example. But still, there's policies that we have for, and obviously when you submit your application in your manifest, you will be able to request network access, request GPS access. There's a list of items that you can get access to, and when you it's not going to display the list of permissions that the app wants on installation, but only when it actually wants to request it. That's when it will ask whether you want this application to whether you want to allow access for that application. For different reasons, one of the things is from my experience, I don't read the list of things that the app wants to do when I install it. Who does? Especially if the application has like 20 different permissions, and it feels to us like asking it in the moment where the application actually wants to do it might be better, because you wouldn't expect it, for example, to access your contact data when you just want to browse the web or something. And at that point, it feels like it's better. So obviously, there's a review step in uploading to the Ubuntu store, which will include people from our side to look at what the app is supposed to do and what permissions does it request. So I don't know, a browser won't be able to access contacts, for example, right? So it's a sanity review of the permissions that the application requests. And to answer your second question, Dalvik, we are strongly of the opinion that applications that are tailored to a platform are not necessarily tailored to another. So we are not planning. We're not planning to include anything that will allow you just run Android applications on Ubuntu.
You have said about AppArmor. Is there going to be anything more to isolate applications like containers or something else?
We are not, as far as I know, there's no plan to use containers for apps right now. They are installed into /opt into a folder structure that the user will that will include the developer's handle, the version of the application, etc. And it will only have write access to that and to a few places that will again be this app specific. So user data, etc. What's more, we will allow, because we are thinking about multi-user, we will allow installation of multiple versions of the same application, so that each user can actually upgrade themselves. So if one user upgrades the application, the other doesn't necessarily want to or can. So so there can be multiple versions of an application installed, and there will basically be garbage collected when people upgrade or uninstall or something. The versions of applications will be garbage collected if no one on the system is using them. Okay, if that's all, thank you very much. There were enough questions that I liked. I have the three devices here with me. If anyone wants to play, you're welcome. Thank you very much again. Thank you for all your valid and great questions. Thank you.